Hi, my name is Eric Soderholm. I'm a bus dealer, and I brought in the very first electric buses to Hawaii with Tom Quinn and what's now the Hawaii Advanced Technical Transportation Technologies, I guess, company. And my experience with that was a disaster. There were all kinds of little people involved in the deal, and the warranty was just crazy. There were so many people pointing fingers. I'm really happy to see the big boys in the room, because what this industry needs is the big boys, GM, Ford, Mitsubishi, Nissan, because you've got to have people to back up this product. I'm a motor vehicle dealer in Hawaii, and I don't apologize for it. My question to you folks, because I dealt with AeroVironment many years ago, and all the people have changed over the years and stuff like that. If what the big boys are saying, that you can do 80% of your plugging in at home, why do you need public infrastructure? Why, if 80% of the thing, if these guys are going to build vehicles finally by one manufacturer and they're going to back up the whole product, why don't you just plug it in at home at a 110 outlet and aloha oi?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm really glad that somebody here asked that question, because I get that question just about anywhere I go. So in my commitment to everybody here, in not to PowerPoint you to death, I actually had a slide that talked to that. And quite simply, in North America today, in the United States, there are 250 million vehicles on the road today. And what many people don't realize is there are only 50 million garages. So when you stop and think about that number, it varies dramatically. I think it was Ted Peck when he came up here and he talked about the fact that he lived vertically. He lived in a multi-dwelling condominium, I believe it was, and there are many people around the United States who are in the same situation. So without a doubt, I guarantee you the number is higher than 80% of people who would prefer to charge at home every night. But in a city like San Francisco, where you can toss, or New York City or Chicago, where you can toss out that 1 in 5 ratio, it now becomes 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. There is the requirement to have public charging, and to have that public charging incredibly accessible.
No, I agree. The MDU population is a large percent of the population that shouldn't be ignored. Recognizing maybe in the first wave of this, maybe a lot of the buyers will be single-family residents, just because it's easy for them. But if you look in Europe, the numbers are even worse, and people do not have a regular parking spot. So I think the fact that you have that application, as well as the whole issue of range anxiety and applications where people are going to find themselves in a situation where they are going to be looking for some charge away from home, and at some point where these cars become more mainstream and not just a commuter car or in-city car, you're going to want to have that flexibility of using it for more than just a daily trip, but going from inner city driving. We're looking at corridors initially. I mean, they're building one out in Oregon. There's talk about LA to Vegas type of corridors. So we see that happening, and it won't happen overnight, but we do see it happening.
I think my colleagues pretty much described it. I think I don't know what the ratio is in Hawaii, but a lot of residents don't have garages here. For those that do, I think the majority of their charging will take place at home. And helping to mitigate the range anxiety by providing public charging infrastructure is going to be an important component to the early deployment and acceptance of EVs.
Yeah, actually, I'm one. My name's John Wendell. I'm a consumer, and I'm going to be buying an electric car, whether it's the Leaf or the Kulim or the IMEV. But I want to be sure to get the Hawaii 500 credit credit for my charger before they run out of money. I don't know if anybody noticed, they got $1 million allocated. They've already got 300 people going to buy a Nissan Leaf, and that $5,000, that's only 200 they can subsidize. So I want to get mine installed right away. How much is it going to cost me to put a level 2 charger in my house? Now, assuming there's no complications with the installation, I already have a 40 amp free circuit, and it's right next to my box. How much is that going to cost me installed for a level 2 charger in my house?
I might expand the question a little bit beyond cost to, what kind of preparations does a homeowner have to make as they prepare to get a charger installed in their home, along with cost?
Sure. For a level 2 charger, obviously you're running a 240 line back to the breaker box. You need a dedicated line. You obviously want a place where you're going to locate it. It can go either inside or outside the house. Usually wall-mounted is the simplest form. Standard price that Nissan has announced is, I believe it was about, on average, $2,200. There is tax credits available for that also from federal tax incentives, as well as I think a number of the states also have incentives, so your final cost will vary, obviously. The things that can affect it, of course, is how far that run is from the breaker box, whether or not the house, how fully loaded that house is currently with other loads on it compared to what's going into it, how old the home is. But if you assume the announced price of about $2,200, you're probably not too far off on average. And then, and that assumes some average cost for permits. I'm not exactly sure what it is for Hawaii at this point, but our local installers, if you haven't contacted them already, would be able to answer that. Does that help?
No, I mean,
Yeah,
basically, he covered it. It's really the installation that's going to be the primary cost driver, and it's pretty straightforward. Is there room in your fuse box, and how far is it? How long is that conduit run? Is there trenching that's going to be required? Those are going to drive the costs up. And if it's the circuit is close by, you have an attached garage, it's a short conduit run, no trenching, it'll be less.
If you want just a little bit more input, we just, through one of our distributors in the mainland, just quoted a fairly large national install, which would all be home type chargers. Their quote to the end user through us, through a distributor, I believe was just under $1,000, as long as there was 240 volts to the premises, as long as the run of cable was less than or up to 50 feet, okay? So it varies dramatically, and both my colleagues here could not be more accurate. We've all seen installations that have gone for just a couple of $100, and I think that, if you get into the trenching thing, which typically in a home you don't get into, but it can go up to many thousands of dollars. It depends on the circumstances.
So go ahead.
Let me just add, if you go onto the Nissan website, there is kind of there's a questionnaire there that helps answer some of those questions that gives you an idea of what to look for and what things you would need to consider, and kind of go into what a standard cost would be.
Question.